There is a study that most people have never heard of, but once you understand it, you will never look at your life the same way again. In the 1960s, a psychologist conducted a series of experiments on how humans learn behavior. His conclusion was simple but devastating. People do not primarily learn from what they are told. They learn from what they see, from what surrounds them, from the environment they live in every single day. Now, apply that to money. If you grew up in an environment where money was always short, where stress was constant, where nobody around you invested or owned property or talked about building wealth, what did you learn? Not from a teacher, not from a book, just from watching, just from being there. You learned that this is how life works, that this is normal, that this is what people like you do, and here is the part that should make you stop and think. Most people are still living in an environment that is actively working against their financial future, and they have no idea, because they've never seen anything different. Let's talk about two people who grew up in the same city, went to the same school, and had almost identical academic records. We'll call them Andre and Michael. After graduation, Andre moved back home. His neighborhood was the same one he grew up in. His friends were the same people he'd always known. The conversations were the same: sports, relationships, day-to-day struggles. Nobody in Andre's circle talked about investing. Nobody owned a business. The big financial decisions in his world were which phone plan to get and whether to buy or lease a car. Andre wasn't lazy. He worked. He earned. But without even realizing it, his environment quietly set the ceiling on his financial imagination. You can't pursue what you can't picture. And Andre had never seen what financial ambition actually looked like up close. Michael made a different choice. After graduation, he deliberately put himself in new environments. He took a job at a company where his colleagues talked about their portfolios at lunch. He joined a community group where small business owners shared advice. He started reading about finance, not because someone told him to, but because the people around him made it feel normal and possible. 5 years later, Andre and Michael had the same degree. But Michael had started investing, was building a side income, and was thinking about property. Andre was still in the same financial position he'd been in at graduation. Same starting point. Different environments, completely different outcomes. Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. Your environment doesn't just influence your mood or your habits in small ways. It fundamentally shapes what you believe is possible for you. And what you believe is possible determines almost every financial decision you make. Psychologists call this the concept of a reference group, the people you compare yourself to, take cues from, and define normal by. Your reference group sets your financial baseline. If everyone in your reference group is renting, renting feels normal. If everyone in your reference group is investing, investing feels normal. If nobody around you is building wealth feels like something other people do, not you. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Your environment doesn't just influence what you do, it influences what you want. When the people around you are spending on certain things, you start wanting those things too. When the people around you don't talk about wealth building, you stop thinking about it. The absence of something in your environment is just as powerful as its presence. This is why two people with the same income, the same education, and the same intelligence can end up in completely different financial positions 10 years later. It's not about willpower. It's not about talent. It's about the invisible curriculum of the environment they've been living in. The psychological mechanisms behind this are powerful and well documented. The first is social proof. Humans are wired to look at what others are doing as a signal of what is correct and safe. In an environment where nobody invests, not investing feels safe and normal. In an environment where everyone invests, not investing feels strange and risky. The behavior of the people around you literally rewires what feels right to you. The second is identity reinforcement. Your environment constantly sends you signals about who you are and what kind of person you are. If every signal in your environment says you are someone who works a job and spends a paycheck, that becomes your financial identity. Changing your financial behavior means changing your identity, and identities are defended fiercely, even unconsciously. The third is cognitive bandwidth. Research showed that scarcity, financial or otherwise, consumes mental bandwidth. When your environment is defined by financial stress and limited resources, your brain is constantly occupied with immediate problems. There is very little mental space left for long-term financial thinking. It's not a character flaw. It's a cognitive consequence of a stressful environment. The consequences of staying in the wrong environment play out slowly, invisibly, and almost inevitably. Andre didn't make a single dramatic bad decision. He didn't blow his money on something reckless. He just stayed in an environment that never pushed him toward anything different, and that was enough. 5 years of small, invisible cues, all pointing in the same direction, produced a result as powerful as if he had actively chosen to stay poor. This is one of the most underappreciated forces in personal finance. We talk endlessly about budgeting, saving, investing. But almost nobody talks about the fact that all of those behaviors are downstream of environment. You can have the best financial plan in the world, but if your environment is working against it every single day, the plan will eventually lose. Research consistently shows that the people we spend the most time with have one of the strongest influences on our income, our savings rate, and our financial decisions, often more than formal education or financial advice. The old saying that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with is not just motivational fluff. It has real, measurable financial consequences. Here's the part that's hardest to accept. Most people never change their environment, not because they can't, but because their environment feels like home. It feels like identity. It feels like loyalty. Leaving behind the financial norms of your community, your family, your friend group, even to build something better, can feel like betrayal, like you think you're better than where you came from. And that emotional weight is often enough to keep people exactly where they are, regardless of what they know intellectually. This is why financial knowledge alone is rarely enough to change outcomes. You can read every personal finance book ever written, but if you go home every night to an environment that reinforces the opposite of everything you've read, the environment wins. Almost every time. The hidden truth is this: changing your financial life almost always requires changing your environment or deliberately creating a new one, not abandoning where you came from, not rejecting the people you love, but actively, intentionally building exposure to different ideas, different people, and different possibilities, because you cannot rise above what your environment tells you is normal. So what can Andre do, and what can anyone do, to deliberately upgrade their environment? First, audit your current environment honestly. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. What are their financial habits? What do they talk about? What do they believe is possible? This is not about judging them. It is about understanding what invisible curriculum you are absorbing every single day. Second, add before you subtract. You don't have to leave your community or abandon your friendships, but you do need to deliberately add new influences. A podcast where people talk about investing, an online community where wealth building is normal, a mentor or colleague who is further ahead financially than you are. New inputs create new possibilities. Third, change what you consume. Your media environment is part of your environment too. What you watch, read, and listen to every day shapes what feels normal and possible. Replacing even 1 hour of passive entertainment with content about financial growth begins to shift what your brain considers achievable. Fourth, put yourself in rooms you don't feel ready for. Networking events, business communities, investment groups, places where people are operating at a financial level above where you currently are. You don't need to have money to learn how people who have money think. And exposure to that thinking consistently over time is one of the most powerful financial upgrades available to anyone. Fifth, protect your new environment fiercely. Once you begin to shift your surroundings, you will face resistance from people who are comfortable where they are and who your growth makes uncomfortable. This is not personal, but it is real. And learning to protect the environment you are deliberately building is just as important as building it. Andre and Michael didn't have different abilities. They didn't have different opportunities handed to them. They had different environments, and those environments quietly and invisibly shaped everything that came after. Your environment is not your destiny, but it is your default. And most people live their entire financial lives on default, absorbing whatever their surroundings tell them is normal, possible, and expected. The most powerful financial decision you can make has nothing to do with a stock or a savings account or a budget spreadsheet. It's the decision to take control of what surrounds you, the people, the ideas, the conversations, the inputs, and to build an environment that pulls you forward instead of one that holds you in place. You cannot outthink your environment, but you can change it, and changing it might be the most important thing you ever do.